Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. It's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and I have another great interview for you today. I want you to meet Lynne from Soft Squares. And, well, Lynne, where are you located?
I'm in Utah. I am in central Utah, just south of Salt Lake.
Oh, okay. Um, that that's I've never been to Utah. Actually, I've always wanted to
It's
go to
pretty.
Utah. Yeah, so I hear with it too. And really, it's a quilting center, isn't it? In the world too. And also it's family genealogy in Utah. And when I used to scrapbook, Utah came up with a lot. There's a few companies out there that are big in the scrapbooking world. So yeah, that's always why I want to go out there. It's got a lot of things going for it. So, how long have you been quilting?
That's kind of a loaded question. So I made my first quilt that I remember when I was 19, maybe 20. Anyway, my best friend had a
Well,
baby.
last
So
year.
I made, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was in the 80s, late 80s, but I made her a quilt and it was puffy. It was that super thick batting and big ruffly thing around it. And it was basically a panel. And sorry, I have a fan blowing. And it's my pride and joy. And now this girl's in her 30s and she still has this quilt. It just like, oh, how sweet. But that was my very first quilt that I made. And I just have sewn for off and on for a long time. It just seems like it's always been there. My mom used to make clothes and all my prom dresses she made. And um, so having a sewing machine was around, but I didn't actually get into quilting, hardcore quilting, until 2009. And I still wouldn't say hardcore, but like my focus on it.
Right.
So in 2008, 2009, that's when the economy here just tanked. And I was at a sales job and I could not find a job for anything. And I ended up working at a sewing machine store in Joann's, the Viking store. A lot of people probably know what that is, and it was part-time minimum wage, but I had sales experience and was a sewer and it's equipment, and it just kind of made sense. And I fell in love with the digital sewing machines,
Right.
and I was making all kinds of samples for them and just really enjoying it. And then when I left there, I went out and got my own machines, plural, and just kind of never stopped.
Well,
So
we all have plural sewing machines. I think so. I know I certainly do. So basically, that's how you got started then, was when you got the job at Joann's, or had you
yeah,
been?
at the Viking store in Joann's. Yeah, it's what really kick-started me, because I had a little machine that I thought was amazing and I spent a lot of money on it. And now in the scope of things, it was nothing compared to what I have now, but it
Right.
was adequate and it worked until I saw what I could get and I had to upgrade. So yeah.
So
So really
before
that was the yeah.
that was the beginning. Okay. So before you sewing clothing? Is that really how you got into sewing?
No.
No.
I was more crafty. I took having a home ec class in high school where we had to make a shirt, and we
Right.
had to wear that article of clothing to get credit. It was the worst thing ever, but I still had to wear it a day at school to get credit for it.
Hmm.
So that's the closest to making anything that was wearable, as I was required to wear it one day. But I was more crafty. And what's funny is when I was a child, I went door to door in the neighborhood pre-selling little crafts that I would go home and make and then sell back to them. So I didn't go door to door with products. I just, I can make you one of these. And like, okay, I'll pay you $1 for that. And I come back with whatever. So
I,
just
I'm laugh
crafty stuff.
I'm laughing at that because I did something very similar when I was a little kid. I was very crafty when I was little. I was always making all kinds of things. And at one point, I got into candle making, and I made these different little stupid little candles because that's what they were. And I went door to door and sold my candles, kind of a thing too. But yeah, I've always, like you, I've always been crafty. So hearing your little story about that, I can definitely relate. So I think you mentioned that your mother sewed as well. So was she a
She
major?
did.
Nope.
She, I think she sewed out of necessity. When we were younger, that's just kind of, you know, big family. That's what she did. And I was the oldest. And so I got to wear the hand sewn stuff the longest. So I remember, this is a side note, but my first pair of jeans that I can remember ever getting was in junior high. And that's because up until then, she'd been making me these little polyester, you know, pants that were fine until I
Yeah.
knew better.
Yes.
And that was the end of my home sewn clothes other than my prom dresses.
Mm.
And so I always had custom prom dresses, which was awesome. I could take this from that pattern and this from that pattern, and we put it together, and it was a unique thing. And I like that. But
Well,
that was it. So
that's sort of like quilting, isn't it? We can do that too. The way we pick our fabrics and the design we want and things like that. And I don't know too many quilters that actually stick to a pattern completely from beginning to end. We always put our own
I don't. I'm so
customization.
bad.
Yeah, that I am too. So was there anybody in any generations in your family that quilted?
Um, Not that I know of. My grandma on my dad's side did the hand um, applique on the tea towels.
Hmm.
So there were a lot of those around, but I can't think of anything or anyone other than there was just always a sewing machine at home. And when my best friend's baby, you know, came, I'm like, she must have a quilt. And that's just kind of what it started with. And honestly, I don't have any family inspiration other than now that I've gotten more into it. I have a cousin that's an excellent seamstress, and she actually used to work for a doll maker making clothing for dolls. And so this stuff is meticulous at tiny size.
Yeah.
And she does quilting too, but I didn't know that about her till I was into this.
Yeah,
So
until you got into that. But I think a lot of people, that is one of the entryways into quilting is someone has a baby and they instantly think, I should make them a quilt. Whether they know how to
right,
or not, I think that's what
right,
inspires some people, to do that kind of thing
right.
with it. So, do you have a favorite creation?
I do, and I brought it
Oh,
and a
do it.
couple
Yes.
others to
Yes,
show
yes,
you. You
let's
okay with
see.
that?
Yes, see, yes, for sure.
Okay, so this one, I have a sewing and embroidery machine as well.
Hmm.
And this one has, it's upside down. Let's see, this way. This took a long time because I had to make the blocks, embroidery blocks.
Hmm.
Plus, I had to figure out the layout that I wanted because I just started with these blocks and it just morphed into what it is.
It's
And it
beautiful.
was
The color
just
combination
fun.
is great. I'm not a big fan of pinks, but seeing the pinks with those green shades, it really stands out.
Well, and this fabric is French. So I was going with what I had to work with, and this has some pink, and I'm like, okay, we're going to match that. And so I just did everything like that. Now, I've been asked to make a quilt that's inspired by this.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much work that's going to go into that. But my sister in law, I'm getting off track. I'll show you the other favorite ones in a minute.
Yeah,
But my
sure.
sister in law sent me this fabric,
Oh, that's nice.
and she wants something similar where it's themed Germany.
Oh, right.
And she's looking for embroidery
Mm.
pieces to go in there, and it's for a wedding for her son, and she wanted a king size. I said, you better talk to them and see if they really want a king size, and if they know it's coming, because it might be one of those things you give it to them, it's a labor of love, and then they don't ever bring it out except for when you visit.
Yeah.
So let's find out if they want it. And they're not sure if they want a king, but it was just funny. So anyway, it's inspired by this though. Is
Well, that's going to be a lot of work at King if you're going to do embroidery on it too, because I do
I hope
embroidery too, so I know how.
I hope it's no bigger than this because this is good size.
Yeah,
So we'll see.
yeah, really. And you said
Okay,
you had others? Yeah.
let me show you another. Okay. Before I had the quilting setup that I do right now, I had a room that was packed, which you could tell I packed this room too, but I had very little room. So this actually hung in my hallway for the whole time I was working on it. And this actually is like 108 or something. It's gigantic.
Yeah.
And
Oh, wow.
I it's my first time playing with pre-cuts actually. And I have a technique that I think I created, maybe not, but it's to make these blocks. I've done some tutorials on it. But I was really excited as I was making these. It's my first time doing this stuff, and
Yeah.
then the quilt got damaged.
Oh
It
no.
got burned. I had it in the top shelf of my curio cabinet, and the light came on. I didn't know it, and it burned a hole all the way through it. I
Oh
have
my
8
word.
holes of burn marks that were like as big as this. So I patched it, which was, this is like the project that was never ending. And that's where you see all these hearts. And on the
Oh,
back, it's more noticeable. Every time you see one of these, there was a burn mark. And there are, this is so big I can't show you, but there are 8. And it was putting that back in the embroidery machine and trapunto style, making it puffy on both sides. And
a lot of
anyway, this quilt is finally done. And it took me a year to make it the first time. The first time.
the first time.
And then several weeks to do just nonstop working on those little hearts. So this one really is like my favorite because I
Yeah.
put so much work into it.
Well, you know that the burn marks may have been a very happy accident, you know, a little like Bob Ross used to say, happy little accidents, because
Yeah.
then you got a
Well,
chance to
and
put those extra embellishments to it, which
it
makes it
does seem
unique.
busy, but I had more fabric and I think I got away with it. If I didn't,
Yeah. I was going to say, if you hadn't pointed that out to me, I would have noticed. I would have
the
thought
backside's a little
all
more
on purpose.
noticeable.
Yeah, but even that adds interest to the back too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. If you didn't know it was there, you
yeah,
wouldn't
you would know.
know.
You would know.
That was that was my goals to make it look usable. And this has been on our beds. So there's that. And I have one more I want to show you.
Yep. By all means. I'm loving them.
This one was inspired by Jenny Doan, Missouri Star.
Hmm.
She was doing the 9 patch, and I watched the video and I thought, I can do that. And I just started making itty bitty little squares. These are 1.5 inch
Yeah,
strips.
I was going to say, ooh,
By the time I was done with it,
you were done with it.
no, actually, it wasn't because I just made squares and I still had got to the point where I was ready to finish this quilt, but I still had a stack of little squares. So I made two other quilts. There's a set of 3 that are very similar that all have these little teeny blocks in them in the same color scheme. Yeah,
Yeah, I do not like tiny little blocks to make them.
I think I don't want to do them again,
Yeah.
but I can say I did it, so I'm very proud of it.
Yeah. Now, on the quilting on those quilts, how did you do that? Are you doing it on a long arm or a domestic or?
So when I lived in another state, I had access to rent long arms. I took me a long time when I moved here to find where I could do that. And then it got to the point where my quilt tops were stacking up. And so I partnered with a quilting and scrapbooking store that has long arm services, and so they work with me, and so they're all done on a long arm, but I don't do it. But I love the process where I could say I did every step of it, including the long arm, but I'm not right now. So they go to a long armor. They're all long armed
Yeah.
quilted.
Well, your long armor did a beautiful job on them too. So
I kept her busy.
yeah.
I so 2 years ago, I'm trying to think, was it 2 years? 2019 or 20. Anyway, I had met all these quilt tops. Oh, it was 2020 because they were doing the government here was doing stimulus checks. And so I got my stimulus check and I'm like, that's what I'm gonna do with it. I'm going to finish. Sorry,
That's okay.
timeout. Hold on. It's the husband. Or hello.
You're still on your interview, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna be a while.
Bye.
Bye.
He's just checking in on you.
Well, I told him to swing by and pick me up, depending on where we were, and he's like, "Never mind." Okay. Sorry. Okay, so the stimulus checks came out. It was like $1,200, and I decided I'm going to pay to get my quilts done. And I had this huge wall of quilts tops where I had the top and the back all paired up and measured and just in bags of their own, just ready to pick up and go. And so I was keeping my quilter very busy. And then I went through the stimulus money, and then went through more money and more money. I probably spent $5,000 or $6,000 that year just on
Wow.
quilting because I had so many quilts for 5 or 6 years I've been saving up.
Right.
And I have a large family. It's a large blended family. And I decided everyone was getting a quilt that didn't already have one. So I was giving away quilts left and right. And I love to do that. And now I still have 2 cabinets in the hallway and a big table full of quilts, and I keep making more. So I actually have an Etsy store.
Well, that's a good
but
thing.
but anyway, my long armor has benefited from me
Yep,
for sure.
you kept a roof over their head and
Yes.
on their table, I guess, for that. So one thing I forgot to ask you before I forget again, where are you located?
I'm actually in Orem, Utah. It's south of Salt Lake. And you're right, Utah has tons and tons of quilt stuff here, and I cannot drive down the street and pass a quilt stop. I have to go in it. I have an addiction to fabric.
Who
So,
doesn't? Who doesn't?
you see my shirt? I don't know if you can see this, what it says. Can you read it?
No, I can't. It's a little the
It says, oh, and the answer is yes, I will need more fabric.
oh yeah.
So this is a t-shirt I had designed. So it's so me. It's like, yes, I need more fabric. I love fabric. Fabric makes me happy, and I can get it anywhere. And I know where to go for the sales online and in the stores. And it's just,
Yeah, I know.
I
Fabric makes me happy too. Don't you love it when you walk into a fabric store and you're buying a bunch of fabric and someone comes over and goes, "Oh, that's pretty. What are you going to do with it?" And I go, "I don't know. It's
I
pretty.
know
I want
the
it."
stash that's going in the stash.
Yeah. They sometimes give you, well, you can tell they're not a true quilter when they ask you that question. They don't understand our
I
obsession with
know.
fabric.
I
So,
know. And you have to be nice to the fabric too. You can't like throw it around. I
no,
was in a quilt store with a young girl. It was her first day, and she was just throwing that around. I'm like, no, you have to be nice
no,
to the
no.
fabric.
Pet
She
it
gave me this
gently.
really
Pet
weird
it
look.
gently. Yeah. Kind of thing. Yeah. I know. I know. I never thought I would be until I got into the quilting. I never ever thought I would be that obsessed with fabric, but I am.
Oh, it's so pretty.
It is. It is. So moving on to a kind of, I'm going to ask you to label yourself, which is an unfair question, but what type of quilter would you describe you are? Do you sort of lean towards the traditional blocks, or are you more into modern, or are you experimental, or how would you characterize yourself as a quilter, if you
I'm
can?
a creative quilter. I am just learning how to read patterns because I just sit down and re-engineer and just make. So my quilts have been more on the simplistic side. To me, they've been complicated, but it's because I am like, how do I get that? Okay, I can figure it out, and I come up with what I do. And when I worked at the Viking store inside the Joanne store, they it was my first time doing paper piecing, and all on my own, I created the word Viking with a paper piecing technique, only seeing what it was. And they still use that sample today, like 12 years
Oh,
later. So I'm like, okay, I think I did okay if they're still using that sample. So I worked at another store a couple years after that where I was actually the manager of the store. And it was a new store. And he said, okay, we need quilt samples, make this. So I look at him like, I can't follow a pattern. I don't know how to make this. And he was shocked because he was the guy who sold me all my machines. And he's like, anyway, so I'm learning how to read patterns, so, but I'm very creative. I sit down, and even if I have a pattern, I am changing it. Like, I could do this better. I like this. I can't leave well enough alone, I guess.
well, that's actually the beauty of this art form too, because you can do that. You don't have to be structured right into the quilt. I hate it when I go into my local quilt store and they have all the samples up on the wall and about their classes, and there's always someone comes in and goes, "I want to make that." And I want that fabric. And they say, well, that was made 6 months ago, a year ago, kind of a thing. That fabric, we don't have it anymore. But and they get really their knickers in a knot over that because they want exactly that. And in my way of thinking, well, you're really not working to the full potential of the creativity of this art form. Break out of the box, make it your own kind of a thing.
I very seldomly follow a kit, although lately I've actually been buying some, but I know it's going to be used differently anyway. But I don't want something everyone else already has,
Yeah,
even if I use the
exactly.
same pattern.
Yeah, that's the way I feel about it too. And I do buy kits at times because sometimes it's just, I find if I need something in more of a rush, um, it's all there. The fabric is there. It's all coordinated for me. Away I can go. But then I sometimes take the kits apart and use the fabric somewhere else. Because at the time I bought the kit, it's 2 years later and I go, why did I buy that? It doesn't appeal to me anymore, but the fabric does. So, but anyways, that is okay. There aren't any quilt police. We can do what we want to do. So that takes me to, I obviously you are in your sewing area and your quilting area. So can you sort of describe it for me? It looks very well organized.
I can play Tetris really well. So it kind of is. It's also a work in progress. I moved into this space in the end of April last year, so it's still kind of trying to find everything in its place. But if you want, I can give you a tour of the room.
I would love a tour of the room, but is it a bedroom, an extra bedroom in your house?
It's a bonus room. It would be a living room, but we've converted into the office because my husband actually has a desk in here too. It's really cute.
Okay.
So
Shared space.
Little space for him, yeah. And he works on the phone. He works from home, so he's on meetings all the time. So we have to coordinate when I can do talking on my videos and sewing, and it works out really well though, because not all the time do I need to be making noise. But we do share the space.
Is it a big space?
It's like so it's a
living room. Yeah.
Living room. Yeah. And you'll see when I show you the room. And I have to brag, when we moved in, he made the counter that I'm standing at. It's gigantic. It's 42 inches long, and it's two counters. We went to IKEA and got the countertops, and it's two of those deep, which I don't know what that depth is, but it's gigantic. Yeah. And then he made my design wall. So I've got some things in here that are unique because I told him what I wanted and they appeared.
If you can show us. I'd love to see.
Okay. And I just thought about this, like, oh, there might be a tour. So it's kind of picked up, but not really. And keep in mind, my husband's in here too. So. So first thing you see is this big wall behind us of my fabric. And then over there is my couch. That's where I sit and do my editing and stuff. And so here, I don't know what you see very well, but
I can see your sewing machine and your table. Yeah.
Yep. There's my fabric, but this is my table.
Oh, nice size.
You're getting a good view. We'll look at it from a different angle, but let's come over here. This is my design wall, which it looks really funny right now because I'm recreating a quilt and I thought I would use it as a pattern. So it's got two quilts going on there.
But it's a nice size.
It is gigantic, and maybe I can get a better angle of it. Anyway, it's floor to ceiling.
And you said your husband made it. So what did he make it from? Is it a plywood frame or something with the?
It's 2-inch foam core board, insulated board that comes in 1, 1.5, and 2-inch. And we went big, and you can see the depth of it right here.
Yeah.
And I wrapped it with a flannel sheet. It's that simple. And then we stapled it on the back and wedged it in.
Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So then I
had a design wall like that.
Oh, it's awesome. Okay, so this is my husband's desk. Ignore that. And over here, again, I'm trying to see what you see. I'm in the basement, obviously.
Yes.
This is where my little dog hangs out when she's allowed in the room. Yeah. My husband has a chair, but it's blocking my embroidery threads. Everything below here are the threads specific for the embroidery. Right. And this is where my embroidery machine used to hang out until last week when I moved it across the room. So now it's just my backup sewing machine. But this is where all my embroidery stuff hangs out. And I talk a lot about embroidery, but I have not done much with it. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with the angle for you.
That's okay.
This is my Sweet 16. It's not working right now, but I do have a sit-down long arm, or mid arm as they call it.
Yep.
And this quilt on the wall is an Anita Good Design embroidery quilt that I made.
It's gorgeous. I love the border on it.
It is fun. And so I used the colors based off of what was in the border.
Yeah.
And the border has their little quilting shacks, buildings. It's really cute.
Yeah, it is.
And then I got kits, and I have a lot of t-shirts, and I just hang them up in here. The t-shirts are actually, I asked my viewers for some ideas of what they wanted on shirts, and most of them ended up in a t-shirt. So I slowly am ordering them, but they're available to buy. But anyway, this is my embroidery machine, and I just made this project, and it's hanging out here.
And what brand is that? Is that a Bernina?
No, this is a FAF. So this
Oh,
one
okay.
and the one at, you can see on my camera gear,
Yep.
the machine over here are both FAF. They're both sewing and embroidery machines. I just exclusively use this one for embroidery and that for sewing. And then my spare machine is a Viking Sapphire.
Oh,
So
okay.
they all have the long arm or the long neck. And I have a couple sergers mixed in here somewhere, but I have not needed them for a while. They might not even be set up, to be honest.
Well, your space is really big. I
It
mean,
is. So here's a view from here. It
oh
looks
yeah.
crowded. It looks crowded.
Well, the more space we have, the more we fill it up. Isn't that the way it goes? Do we ever have a
Well,
neat space?
I was overflowing into the living room before, so it made sense if it could go in one room to do that.
Yep.
And then we've actually set up couches in here too. We've got a TV and his desk, so it's not all me.
No, it's not all you. But if you kicked him out, it could be all you.
It would be, yes, it would be.
Be nice. Well, it's a great space, and I love the way you have everything. You have it organized. It is organized, and
It is.
nobody's sewing room is. If you show me somebody that has a sewing room that you can eat off the floors and you're not going to get thread stuck to you or something like that, and I'll show you somebody that doesn't quilt.
I know.
That's the order of the day, really,
Yeah,
is have that there. That's a productive mind. It shows that a creative mind is at work. That's a good thing. You
exactly.
can sign up over and go, creative mind at work, excuse the mess.
Yeah,
Kind of a thing.
exactly.
So, well, I'm glad you showed us that because I really enjoy seeing what other people's setup is like. And I know other people do too, because everybody's curious about how do other people, store their stuff, how they lay it out, what machines they have. And speaking of all of that with your machines, were you going to say something about?
Oh, I was just gonna say, these are just cubbies. I just started putting them together and I created the layout that it is. And then I used to do craft shows, and so I've got the grid wall,
Mm,
which you might have noticed I have incorporated in the other end of the room
yeah.
because why not? It's
Yeah.
it's here. So they're I've got this funny looking black grid wall that you wouldn't normally see in a room, but it's being utilized here.
Yeah.
So
Well, if it works, that's all that matters.
it's great. Yeah, it's really good for space.
So, out of in that room, do you have a favorite tool or tools that are always within your grasp? You can't quilt without them. And
Because I
I'm
have so
talking
many
about your
machines.
machines.
Yeah. Because I have so many sewing machines, I try to have little stations with everything close by. Like here's one, got one over there. I obviously have a lot of scissors in this one. This is not a good example, but rotary cutter is my favorite. Stiletto is very, very helpful. Although I can, my absolute favorite thing in the whole place is this. These are little snips.
Mm,
They're not too small, not too big. So here's a large
yeah.
hair, but they can cut. They're not like those itty bitty, teeny tiny, and there's they have some weight to the handle. I don't even know who makes it. Heritage.
Mm,
And I just grab these all the time unless I'm cutting something long, but I'm
right.
always hunting these down, even though I have other small scissors at all my stations. This is my one pair that I really want. But a rotary cutter, I could not live without a rotary cutter. I don't know
Yeah, right. Exactly. The best
how I could do
invention
this
ever
without
for
that.
quilters. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And I really like your idea of having your tools at each station. So you're not running over here, running over there, looking for it. You've got duplicates around. So that's a great idea, really.
It is. And that's actually kind of the same theory with me buying fabric and stuff. It's like, I want to sit down and sew. I don't want to say, oh, I need this and have to stop. So I want to have everything I need when I sit down.
And I
So
noticed the project boxes behind you, which I
I
think
love.
originally when those were made, they were meant for scrapbookers because they were the right size. Because I know I had tons of them. Well, now that I don't scrapbook anymore, that's what I make up kits all the time. Like I get a pattern, I pick my fabric, I put them all in there to work on it in the future.
We'll just pull one of these out. So yeah, these are all coordinated fabrics. This is actually a project I did start, one of my UFOs. And so I put everything for it in here. And a lot of these boxes though are just fabric coordinating sets. I don't even know exactly what I'm going to do, but I wanted everything in one place.
Yeah.
Otherwise I have my fabric organized by size. Like these are what could be backings because there are lots of yardage.
Yep.
My smaller ones are hanging out over here, and these actually are organized by color or style. I have my pre-cuts hanging out in the corner over there, but if I have a collection of stuff, they're in one of those bins. Or
I like
actually,
that idea. I hadn't really thought about that idea, but of taking the coordinating fabrics and putting them all together into one, like a project box or something like that, that's given me some good ideas. I may have to try that.
well, I was worried that I would forget and use something and then, then not have it. So yeah, I tried to organize them that way. Here's a good example of that. So this is just fabric only. And it has everything I've got that's part of that. And then I think I have I was utilizing the space and some of them ended up with extra fabric. I don't know why this is in here. Maybe I was going to use it with it. But I have yardage. So yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I have everything in here. Except the jelly rolls don't fit in here if I have something else with it. And so they're all in a whole other place. So
yeah, I found that too. The jelly rolls just they
don't play well.
No, they don't. They don't play well. That's right. Well, I have to reorganize my fabrics again too because I'm starting to overflow, and I thought I had it all laid out so I knew where things were, but I need to do some reorganizing again. But that's half of the beauty of this, though. I love doing that. I love reorganizing my sewing room all the time.
I'm always moving things. And when I used to do craft shows, I'd go set up for a couple of days, and the booths that were around me, they're like, you never stop rearranging, because I did the whole time I was there. I was just moving things around, and by the time I trying to break it down, it finally was where I wanted it to be. So that's kind of my space in here too.
So if you had all the money in the world, is there a piece of equipment you'd invest in?
I would like to get a long arm. However, that's a lot of work. And I have the Sweet 16. I wouldn't mind getting a standalone frame, like the cuties or whatever, the 6-foot frame. That way I could just drive it instead of having to move the fabric underneath it. I'd like to move the machine. But the long arm, every time I would rent the machine, I always had to have help loading it. The first time I did it backwards, and it was just ingrained in my head. And every time I tried it on my own, I would screw up. So I'm a little scared to be left alone with a long arm if I were to get my own.
Well, I can tell you this. I was the same way. I used to rent time on a long arm at a place in my area that you could do that. And I had to take a little course to learn how to do it. But every time I went in, I needed help because I would forget because I wasn't using it on a regular basis. And it did give me stress. But I have my own long arm now. And I was like you. When I got the long arm or was thinking about getting a long arm, I was afraid I was going to screw up badly. And this is an expensive piece of equipment and all that. But I have found, no, when you have your own, you learn and you remember, and no, you won't screw up. Well,
and you have pride of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. You will screw up. There's a learning curve, but it's not the same. It's yours. You're in the privacy of your own home, and no one's going to stand over top of you and laugh at you because you didn't do it right.
Well, I think the first 4 or 5 quilts I made, I did send them out. And then after that, I was just gathering and collecting them. And I seriously have sent over 100 quilts to my long armor. I would be owning a long arm if I had invested that money in one. True. Of course, I don't have the space, but
that's the other
yeah.
You have to have space for it. But you want to know something? It's funny how you can find the space if you really need it. I didn't think I had the space either. I made it work.
I'll kick my husband out of here. There'll be room.
Well, there you go. Simple solution. Bye-bye. And replace you with a long arm. Yeah. So, moving in another direction, have you ever belonged to a group like a guild or design team or something online?
I participated in the Project Lioness project, which is quilts for kids in the hospital, I think. And it's just an open sew, come in and hang out. And then I have joined some guilds, but I never go because like a lot of other quilters, I hate packing my stuff up and going out and then rearranging my schedule and sticking to a schedule and a time. And the quilt alongs on Zoom or on YouTube are nice. I still don't stick to a schedule, but I really, I want to say no, I joined them. I haven't really participated. And so I'm like, I don't think I'm going to pay those dues this year.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know what you mean about that, and it is that the scheduling and things like that. I don't usually get involved with sew-alongs, although ironically, Stephanie Stitches and I just finished up a sew-along we're doing together. But
that.
I don't like to be on somebody else's schedule. I used to be a school teacher. My life was dictated by bells all the time. And now that I'm retired and that, no, I'd rather have my own schedule, and it's one that it's mine. And if I have to change it, I can change it, not somebody else's. So I get what you mean about that. And I did belong to a guild for a couple of years, but when you were the only man with 100 ladies, let's just say all of them were not male friendly. So
Well, they're a different category of people, the
yeah,
quilters are.
yeah, yeah. And
Some of them get in their little pet mindset.
yeah, and each
Yeah.
guild does have a different personality. It just happened to be that I got into this one. I'm sure if I seeked out another one somewhere and that, it might be a totally different ball game. But I prefer Zoom. I like, because I don't have to lug my stuff, and so that's worked out really well for me. And it's one thing that I think we've learned from the pandemic is the advantage of online things, especially with something like Zoom. Now it just makes it so much easier. I mean,
During the pandemic, I was watching a lot of Donna Jordan and Jenny Doan, and I think there were some others, but those were the main ones. And I actually was writing down, taking notes of all these things that they're doing so I can recreate the blocks and
yeah.
whatnot. And I just, for hours, would just watch and be mesmerized by it. And finally, I'm like, off to the sewing room I go. So yeah, it was the pandemic that really, really kicked it into gear. So
Yeah, I think so. So I think if there's anything good that came out of the pandemic, I think that's one thing that did. Also, I mean, if you and I were going to a guild meeting or to a retreat or something like that, I would not get to see your sewing room. I just got to see your sewing room. So, which is really nice, that kind of thing, because you don't when you go into in-person ones, you don't see that.
and I never know what I want to work on, which is why I keep starting projects and moving on to something else. I can't come up with a schedule of what I want to do when I make videos either. It's like I don't know what I'm going to feel like tomorrow. Same when I pack to go on a trip, I don't know what I want to wear. I have to take options. So I went to my first retreat this last fall with Di of Sister Chicks Quilting. It was in a couple hours in my house. I loaded my car up with all kinds of things because I did not know what I wanted to work on, and
Yeah,
it was nice, but it wasn't like being at home and just sitting and grabbing and doing and
yeah.
not having to set up and deal with little space. And but I can say it was fun for meeting the women, and that was nice. But I do prefer to sew home.
It's nice. The socializing part of it is very nice, and seeing everybody's projects and that. Although I do find with Zoom, I can socialize and see their projects too. It's just that
Right.
we've got a computer screen between us, but sometimes that's not a bad thing either.
Right.
But the same thing, yeah. When I went to some retreats, it took me probably an hour to get actually into sewing because I'm trying to arrange all my stuff in the most efficient way. And the worst
Mm-hmm.
part is if you get everything out there, no matter how much you've planned, and you forget something, and it
Yeah,
just freezes you up right at that moment with it. On Zoom, it's always there. You didn't forget a
I
thing.
know.
It's in your house. So yeah, I like that. So, um, where do you get your supplies? Do you do a lot of online, or do you have a lot of local stores you can go to? I mean, it is Utah, so I have a feeling there
I
are.
do both. I do both. I do not like to pay full price for anything, especially fabric, because when you have this much, that's a silly. I want to make it as affordable as I can
Yep.
to feed my obsession. Anyway, I know where to go in most of the frequently traveled or visited shops that I go to find our sales stuff. I'll go straight to that sale room or the sale bin or whatever. And sometimes I'll kind of wander around if I have a coupon or something, but that's where I usually go. Online, I do the same thing. I go right to what's the steal of the day or what's clearance or sale or whatever sale. So I do Missouri Star Quilt Company. I lately have been doing a lot with Keepsake Quilting. I just love what I'm getting from them. It's online. And uh Etsy, there's several shops I visited on Etsy. The Modern Quilter is one of them that comes to mind. So I try to, I like to support the small
Yeah.
businesses, and so local is really good. and then the small Etsy stores. But if it's something I like and I want, I'm just gonna grab it. I want it. So
Yeah.
it could be from anywhere.
Yeah, I'm like that too as well. I do a lot of online, but we have a couple of stores out here. We're lucky with that, and I go to them all the time as well because same as you, I like to support them. And the ladies at my main store are wonderful. You know, they held my hand when I went in and got my first sewing machine, not knowing about anything, and you know, they've always been a great source of inspiration and information all the time, and they're just nice to visit with. I
It
always
is.
enjoy my time there. So, well, okay. So, speaking of, you've mentioned Jenny Doan, you've mentioned Donna Jordan, that kind of thing. So, do you have some regular what we might consider experts that you go to time and time again for, you know, help, information, inspiration?
Well, when I was bored with the pandemic and not able to do anything, go anywhere, and I worked from home at that point, so I was watching a lot of YouTube, and that's when I realized I could do a YouTube channel. So that's kind of how that started. But I was just watching mainly those two, and I would sometimes YouTube would give you a recommendation, so something might pop up. But those are the two that I liked how they, what they were doing and how they made them. So I I don't actually watch a lot of videos anymore because I am too busy on my side now because I've moved in, trying to get settled, got married since the pandemic. So that's a whole new adjustment. And then just getting my YouTube channel going and trying to ramp up my Etsy store and all these different things. And I'm like, oh, I need, an IT person. Well, I'm the IT person and I'm not very good at that. So I have a lot of technical issues. It just takes longer for me to do anything. So free time to watch isn't really there, but
Yeah.
those are people that show up in my feed all the time. There's Stephanie Stitches. I really like what she does. I wish I could think of some others off the top of my head, but I can't. But there are just, little things that pop
Oh,
up, and I do watch them, but I don't spend a lot of time anymore.
no, I'm constantly watching, but I usually have them on while I'm sewing. So one eye kind of looking at them, the other eye making sure I'm not sticking my hand under the needle, kind of a thing. But yeah, I know what you mean about that, the time business. And there's just so much you can choose from on YouTube alone, you know, like my God, what did we do in the days before YouTube? Like can't imagine. It has everything.
So,
So, let's talk about your YouTube channel now, since we're talking about YouTube. So it's called Soft Squares. So how did you come up with that name and when did you start it?
there's a little bit of backstory to this. Back when the economy tanked in 08, 09, I could not find a job and I had attended college but not done much with it. And I decided to go back to school. So I went back to the junior college that had just opened. I thought I'd dip my toes in and see where it went. And I have a marketing degree, an associate marketing degree from there. And then I went on to university and have a bachelor's in sales and communication, or business and communication. There we go. But I'm always sales oriented. So during my associate, sorry, there's my brain, my associate program, I was sewing. And my professor, because he was like the main one we saw in most of our classes, he knew about this somehow. I think I might have done a report on it or something. And we had to come up with some kind of a business plan. And he says, do that. You already have it. And so I did. I came up with that, and I did my internship with a gal that I know that um, had a marketing company. So I was learning more that way. And then I opened an Etsy store. And so soft squares came because of my schooling, and I was just already dabbling anyway. But the whole reason for the soft square is it's a quilt. It's soft
Right.
and it's square. And I like the double S. And my logo is actually two S's, but one's turned to make a heart. You have to
Oh,
look really hard to see that, but that's my thought behind that. And even I was very careful in picking the colors, and it was just a lot of fun. So the Etsy store kind of just hung out, and I was doing the craft shows here and there and going. Then I went on to college and got my bachelor's, and I'm still working. And this is when I'm working in the quilt store as a manager, still doing my stuff on the side when I felt like it, but just real casual. And then I decided I'm going to ramp this thing up. This is about 2 years ago. during the pandemic. So I had the name already. I already had the business established. It just slid in, and then I ramped up with everything else. And I'm not very good with social media yet. I have all the accounts. I don't do much with them yet, but I have soft squares hopefully everywhere where social media is now. And then the YouTube thing is really where my focus is right now. But my Etsy store has been established since 2011, which is good for me to have that history.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
so basically, your YouTube channel is an extension of your business. It's part of your business model.
Yeah, and the reason I started it is because my dad's wife, she does a lot of machine embroidery, and she was doing clothing and hats, and she decided she wanted to get into quilts. And so she was asking me questions because I was already piecing quilts, and she just kind of been watching me, and then she'd ask questions like, how do you do this, and how do you do this, and how do you bind? And next thing I know, it's like I was teaching classes at both the sewing stores I worked at. I've done a lot of tutorials at different jobs I've had. I can do a tutorial on YouTube. It would be the
Yep.
same thing. So between her asking questions and just finding a love for this, it's like, I can do this. So I'll share what I know. I'm not an expert by any means, but I like to share what I have and what I know.
Well,
And so,
your YouTube actually is full of a lot of really useful information, and you put it across in a very understandable manner. I mean, you can go on some YouTube channels and you want to learn how to do a certain technique, and you're more lost than you were before you came to that channel. But I've been watching yours, and I'm learning some things from it as well. And yeah, it's very clear, very clear. So yeah, I think it was a natural progression for you then from what you've said of what you were doing in the store environment.
yeah,
So that's great. And your subscriber base right now is, you've got about 500 subscribers?
300, 4,300. Yeah,
3,200. Okay, so that's a pretty good
4,000.
number. And I'm hoping that when people see this interview too, they will be directed. I will put the links to your YouTube channel down in the show notes and that, so they can easily find you in that, because that's part of my mission in doing YouTube channels and doing the interviews, is to direct people to sources that I find useful. So I'm hoping they will find useful too. So
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm all about helping each other. So if I can, if you're okay, I'll cross promote, do something on my side, send people your way too. My first couple, I don't know, first part of my videos are really rough. So if you go to an older video, please be patient. There's some of them are still kind of rough, but it's
you
a
all
learning
have to
process
start
as I go.
somewhere. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody comes off absolutely a perfect first video. No, there's too many things to consider when you're doing that. It comes with time. In my case, I don't know if it'll ever come, because I hate to edit. I don't. And I'm sure that's probably apparent in some of my videos. But, I'm not doing it because I want to make, documentary style videos that are going to win Oscars on it. I'm doing it because I want to help other people with things. I want to share my mistakes. That's why I call myself the Idiot Quilter.
Yeah, I try to be real. It's like,
Yeah.
you saw what I did, let's fix it.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. And also, when people first get into quilting and they go to YouTube, as they will, if they come into a YouTube where the person showing it never shows a mistake, everything works like clockwork, perfect product at the end of the whole thing,
You get intimidated.
exactly. And no, those people started somewhere. They're just not showing you where that was, kind of a thing. So anything else you'd like to tell me a little bit about YouTube, like sort of promote here?
I used to just be kind of random, and I still am a little bit as far as what I post, but I now have a schedule. So on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Mountain Time, I post a video called the Saturday Situation. It's more of an update of things that I've been up to, works in progress, fabric hauls, little personal updates, just kind of random stuff like that. And then on Mondays at 3 p.m. Mountain Time, I have Maker's Monday, where I focus on a technique or a project or something specific. And then I'll throw in different videos throughout the week of unboxings and, whatever I have that's extra. So, but I have those 2 days that I've started in November, so I'm still working on that schedule. Sometimes I'm off by a couple hours or even a day, but those are planned that
Yeah.
you can go to.
Well, that's a good thing, because I think people like consistency. I have found anyways, they know that, okay, on this particular day, this is going to be coming up. And people do actually will arrange their schedules around that, I have found, which is kind of scary. And then you feel, if I don't get it out on that day or whatever, I'm letting them down. And then that's a whole new
I
ball of.
know, I get stressed. It's like it's
Yeah.
2:30 and I'm still processing my video.
Yep.
It should have been uploaded last night, but
Yep.
it's
Know exactly how you
self-imposed.
feel. Yep, I think most YouTube creators feel that way too. So, do you have any challenges or goals for the future that you want to achieve?
I really want my channel to grow, but to grow with anyway, just to grow with people that really want to be there and be part of the community. I have some diehard subscribers that I love, and I know I'm going to see comments from them, and it's like, oh, I know you, and I know you, and it just, I don't know. So it makes me feel good when people are commenting, and I just want to have content that's fun that people can relate to, that they want to watch, and then they're like, oh, I want to comment on that too. So that's really my goal, is to be more relatable and do better with my technology. As I've said, I'm not very good at that,
It'll
and
come
I
with
have
time.
issues. Yeah, so it's been fun. It's been a learning process,
Yeah.
all of it,
Mhm.
but I'm just hoping to keep growing and learning from it.
Well, that's great. So, before we finish up here, do you have any advice for anyone who might want to get into quilting?
Don't give up. Don't let the quilt police get to you, because they do exist and they're mean. Don't worry about it unless you're going to make a quilt that's going to be entered into something. It's do what you want. It's unique, and you can make up your own stuff. Yes, there's certain things that have been developed, but who says you can't do it a different way? And make mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And if you, I have a story. I made this quilt for my sister-in-law, and when I handed her the quilt, I noticed a big block turned backwards. I mean, I quilted it, I did everything, and it's a big block. And I'm like, how did I not see that until just now as I'm handing it to her? Oh well, you just like, okay.
You just
So
move
witness
on.
your mistakes.
It happens. It's a
Excuse me.
customization. It's not a mistake. It's a customization. It makes it unique to you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's really good advice. And if I'm hearing you correctly, two things I gather from your advice is one, think outside of the box. And the other one is be fearless. Just go for it.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I heard someone say once, it's only fabric and thread. It's not going to end the world. So,
That's right.
you got to have fun with this. It's a hobby. If it's not fun, then you're doing it wrong. I mean,
Right. And that's the thing with my YouTube channel. It's like, I don't want to be stressed out over this. This is why I started it, is because it was fun. So I don't want to have to sit and sew. I don't want to have to deal with the deadline. I've given myself deadlines, but don't do that to yourself. Do it because you're having fun. When people ask me to make stuff, I say I have two rules. One, I cannot tell you when you're going to get it.
yes.
And two, I need some creative liberty with the pattern. So you're going to be surprised when you get it and what it's going to look like, because those are two things that I
Yeah.
need a month.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all very good advice that everybody should pay attention to. So, just before I go, is there any final words, anything else you would like to say while we're here?
Thank you. Thank you so much for
Welcome.
letting me do this. I was thrilled to death when I got your email. So I just appreciate that. And I hope that you benefit from this as well. And thank you so much.
Oh, you've already given me some ideas, especially that one about the project boxes and putting your coordinated fabrics all together in that. So, you find a pattern, you go, bang, these are the ones
Yeah.
for that. I
Yeah.
like that idea a lot. And I am going to incorporate that. So I always learn something from an interview as well, because people have a lot of great ideas. But anyways, I have kept you long enough, but do stay on the line here as I say goodbye to everybody. But again, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. It was wonderful. It's great. Love the tour and love seeing your quilts and everything. So this was excellent. So you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you online, and I will, because I'll be on your
I'm sure we
YouTube
will.
channel, and we'll see you
Thank
again
you.
in the future. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.